Welcome to the Radio Revenue Podcast.
Glad to be here.
So today we are doing a deep dive into a company that is kind of sitting right at the absolute dead center of the AI revolution.
Yeah, but they somehow managed to stay totally out of the spotlight.
Right. We're cracking open the hood on Arista Networks. Ticker symbol is ANET, and specifically, we are looking through the 2025 annual report.
And it is a fascinating one because, when most of you out there think about the whole AI boom, you probably picture the brains of the operation. You think about large language models, GPT, or those massive GPU chips from NVIDIA doing all the actual thinking.
Trashy stuff.
Exactly. But today, we aren't looking at the brain, we're looking at the spine.
The spine. I like that. That's a sticky image.
Well, logically, a brain in a jar doesn't actually do anything.
Right.
Not if it can't send signals to the rest of the body.
Precisely. You can have the smartest AI model in history running on the fastest chips money can buy. But if you can't move that data between the processors fast enough, the AI just...
It creates a traffic jam.
Yeah, it stalls. And Arista Networks is the company building the central nervous system that prevents that stall from happening.
And if you actually look at this 10K form, business is absolutely booming. I mean, we are talking about a company that generated over $9 billion in revenue in 2025.
$9 billion.
Yeah, just by helping the world's biggest tech giants move their data around.
$9 billion is a serious number, and we are going to tear apart those financials in a bit because there are some massive red flags hidden in there.
Oh, absolutely.
Especially regarding who exactly is getting that bill. But before we get to the money, I kind of want to unpack the philosophy here.
Sure, let's do it.
Because reading through this report, they keep using this phrase that, honestly, it feels a bit like marketing word salad at first glance.
The centers of data thing.
Yes. They talk about shifting from data centers to centers of data. Like, is this just a clever way to sell more cables, or is there an actual architectural difference here?
I mean, it does sound like a slogan, I'll give you that. But it's actually a complete rejection of the last 20 years of IT strategy.
How so?
So in the old model, a data center was a specific place, a building with intense air conditioning and endless rows of servers.
Right. A physical warehouse for data.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But Arista is arguing that in 2025, that concept is completely obsolete. Data isn't just in a warehouse anymore. It's fractured.
Okay, let's dig into that for everyone listening. If the data is fractured, how do you manage it? Because usually when things are scattered all over the place, they are way harder to control.
And that is exactly the problem they solve. They've broken their strategy down into 4 interconnected domains.
Okay.
You have the traditional data centers, sure, but now you also have AI centers, which have completely different physics and power requirements.
Right, because of the cooling and the massive energy draw.
Exactly. Then you have campus centers, which are your offices, your physical workspaces, and finally, WAN centers.
Wide area networks.
Right, the WAN centers connect everything together geographically. The core issue is that for the last decade, these domains were all what the report calls incongruent silos.
Silos, which is basically corporate speak for not my problem.
Pretty much. Think of it like this. The security team at the office used one operating system. The cloud guys used another. The server guys used a third.
So a total Tower Babel situation.
Totally. If you had a performance issue, you had 3 different teams looking at 3 different screens, speaking 3 entirely different languages.
Sounds like a nightmare to troubleshoot.
It was. So Arista's entire pitch, this whole center of data concept, is to smash those silos. They want to create a unified data lake where everything speaks the same language.
And that language is EOS, right?
Correct. The extensible operating system. This is their absolute crown jewel.
So it's not just a hardware play?
Not at all. Imagine if your smartwatch, your laptop, your car, and your office thermostat all ran the exact same version of Linux.
You could just push one update and manage them all from a single dashboard.
That is exactly what EOS does for networking. It runs on everything from their massive AI spine switches all the way down to the little box in a branch office.
Which implies that the real value here isn't the metal box. It's the software running inside the box.
You nailed it. That is the key insight for anyone looking at this company. Wall Street loves software companies because software scales so much better than hardware.
So Arista is essentially a software company disguised as a hardware manufacturer.
Basically, yes. And they layer a system called NetDL, the network data lake, right on top of that OS.
What does that do?
It sucks up all the telemetry data, every single error, every packet drop, every tiny temperature spike from every device, and puts it in one centralized database.
So instead of a human engineer hunting for a broken cable in a haystack, the software just points right to it.
Even better than that,
Yeah.
they use a management platform called Cloud Vision to apply AI operations to that data.
Okay.
So the system can say, hey, the Wi-Fi in the London office is acting up because of a weird configuration change you just made in the New York server rack.
Huh. Wow. It correlates things a human would probably never connect.
Exactly. That is the true center of data strategy. It's about total visibility, not just basic connectivity.
Okay, so they clearly have the software advantage.
Yeah.
But let's be real here. The reason everyone is looking at this stock, the reason we are doing this deep dive, is the AI pivot.
Of course.
You literally can't read 2 sentences in this 2025 10K without hitting the word AI.
It's everywhere.
But I want to push back on this a bit for our listeners. How does a networking switch actually power AI? Because we aren't talking about generating images or writing poetry here. We are talking about plumbing.
We are talking about plumbing, yes. But it's plumbing for a very specific, very difficult substance. The report actually gets pretty technical here, talking about sparse matrix math.
Yeah, I saw that phrase, sparse matrix math. It sounds like something from a graduate physics exam. Why does a network switch care about math?
Because of how modern AI actually works under the hood. When you train a massive model, say a GPT-5 or whatever comes next, you are taking a giant mathematical problem and chopping it up into millions of tiny pieces.
Right.
And you distribute those pieces across thousands of processors. Arista calls them XPUs in the report.
XPUs being your GPUs, TPUs, basically whatever silicon is doing the heavy crunching.
Right. Now, here is the catch. These chips have to talk to each other constantly to sync up their answers. And this is where that sparse matrix math gets really tricky.
Because it requires perfect synchronization.
Exactly. If you have 1,000 chips working on a single problem, and just one chip is waiting for a packet of data because the network delayed it by a single microsecond.
The other 999 chips stop and wait.
They all stall. It's a cascading failure called tail latency.
Ah.
The slowest packet dictates the speed of the entire multi-billion-dollar supercomputer. If the network isn't perfect, you are literally setting money on fire every time those chips sit idle.
That makes total sense. It's like having a convoy of Ferraris stuck in traffic. It doesn't matter how fast the cars can go if the traffic light is stuck on red.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
That is why Arista's role is so critical. They aren't just moving files around. They are keeping the heartbeat of the AI completely synchronized.
So how are they actually solving this? The report mentions 3 different networking domains, or scales.
Right. Scale up, scale out, and scale across. This is basically their roadmap for the next 5 years.
Let's break those down, because this seems to be where the real battle lines are drawn with their competitors. Let's start with scale up. That's inside the server rack, right?
Correct. Scale up is connecting the chips that are sitting mere inches away from each other within a single rack.
Okay.
Now, historically, and even right now in 2025, this space is completely owned by NVIDIA.
Right, because of InfiniBand.
Actually, inside the rack, it's a proprietary technology called NVLink. It's a totally walled garden. NVIDIA essentially says, if you use our chips, you use our cables and our switches.
So why does Arista think they can win there? I mean, if I'm NVIDIA, why would I ever let Arista into my rack?
You wouldn't, not voluntarily.
Yeah.
But the customers, the hyperscalers like the Googles and Microsofts of the world, they absolutely hate being locked in.
Nobody likes a monopoly when they are the ones paying the bill.
Exactly. They don't want to be beholden to one vendor for everything. So Arista is betting that the market will eventually force a shift toward open standards, specifically standard Ethernet.
They believe the buyers will demand that the scale-up layer becomes open, which allows Arista to slip right in.
Yes, it's a huge bet.
That feels like a long shot, though, taking on NVIDIA on their home turf. But the next one, scale out, that seems more like a fair fight for them.
Scale out is the main event. This is connecting the racks to each other.
Right.
We are talking about massive clusters of up to 100,000 XPUs working together.
Wow.
Traditionally, a technology called InfiniBand was used here because it was faster and had lower latency than standard Ethernet. And NVIDIA basically owns InfiniBand too, by the way.
Of course they do. They own everything AI right now.
But Arista is leading a sort of industry rebellion called the Ultra Ethernet Consortium.
Ultra Ethernet, I love that. It sounds like a superhero team.
In a tech nerd way, it kind of is. It's a consortium of tech giants banding together to make standard Ethernet fast enough to essentially kill InfiniBand.
And according to this 10K report, it's actually working.
It really is. Arista's Etherlink portfolio, specifically their new 800 gigabit switches, like the 7800R AI spine they mentioned,
Yeah, the 7800R.
those are designed specifically to handle that tricky sparse matrix math without the latency penalties. They are betting the farm that open standard Ethernet will beat proprietary InfiniBand.
So it's the classic open versus closed ecosystem war. It's Android versus iPhone, Windows versus Mac. Arista is the champion of the open system here.
Exactly. And then you have the third domain, which is scale across.
The geography problem.
Right. Because you simply can't fit a million high-powered chips in one building. The local power grid would literally melt.
You have to spread them out.
Yes. You distribute these clusters. Maybe some are in Texas, some in Virginia, some in Iceland for the cheap cooling. Scale across is about connecting those clusters over thousands of miles.
And this is where a very specific acquisition in the report comes into play. Did you catch the VeloCloud detail?
Oh, I definitely caught that.
They bought VeloCloud from Broadcom for $300 million. Finished the deal June 30th, 2025. At first, I thought they were just buying revenue, but it fits perfectly into this scale-across idea, doesn't it?
It fits like a glove. VeloCloud is what's called SD-WAN technology, software-defined wide-area networking.
Okay, what does that actually mean for the network?
Think of it as a really smart traffic controller for the internet, as AI moves from just training in a massive data center to inference out at the edge.
Like an AI agent running in a local branch office or a factory?
Right. When that happens, you need a smart, reliable way to route that data back to the core. VeloCloud gives Arista the software to manage that long-distance relationship perfectly.
It connects the heavy brain to the remote limbs.
Exactly.
Okay, so they clearly have the tech stack. They have the centers of data strategy, and they have the Ultra Ethernet Alliance. Let's look at the scoreboard now, because the financials in this report are just massive.
They are staggering. Total revenue for 2025 hit $9.0 billion.
Which is up 28.6% from the $7 billion they did in 2024.
Right. And for a hardware company of this size and maturity to be growing at nearly 30% year over year, that is very rare.
And it's highly profitable growth, too, which is even rarer in the tech hardware space. Net income was $3.5 billion.
Incredible margins. And for the shareholders listening to this, you probably noticed the stock split they mentioned.
The 4-for-1 split?
Yeah, they executed a 4-for-1 split in December 2024. That usually signals that management is incredibly confident and wants to keep the stock price visually accessible to retail investors.
But hold on, this is exactly where I want to pump the brakes a little bit. The numbers are great, sure. But when you look at who is actually writing those checks, it gets a little scary. The report breaks their customers down into enterprise, specialty providers, and cloud and AI titans.
The titans. We're talking about Microsoft, Meta, Google, Amazon, basically the 4 or 5 companies that own the internet.
And they kind of own Arista, too, in a way. The report says these cloud and AI titans made up 48% of their total revenue.
Nearly half the business.
But it actually gets worse. 2 specific unnamed customers, let's just call them customer A and customer B, they accounted for 26% and 16% of total revenue, respectively.
That is the textbook definition of concentration risk.
42% of Arista's entire global business is tied to just 2 purchase orders.
It's wild. If customer A decides to change their architecture tomorrow, or if they just have a bad quarter and put a freeze on capital spending, Arista's stock crashes.
And these titans aren't exactly known for being loyal friends. They are ruthless businesses. What are the specific risks of dancing with whales this big?
Well, first off, whales squeeze you. They demand massive volume discounts.
Right.
So selling $1 billion of gear to Microsoft has a much, much lower profit margin than selling $1 billion of gear to 1,000 different regional banks.
Makes sense. Volume pricing.
But the bigger risk, the truly existential one, is the white box threat.
The do-it-yourself risk.
Exactly. Companies like Amazon and Google have thousands of brilliant hardware and software engineers. At some point, the finance team looks at an Arista switch and says, why are we paying a huge premium for this?
Let's just design our own box and have Foxconn build it for us directly.
Right, that's the white box model.
It's kind of like baking your own bread. Sure, you can do it, but is it really worth the mess in the kitchen when the bakery down the street makes it perfect every single time?
That is the exact bet Arista's making. They are betting that their EO software is so complex, so hyper-efficient, and so hard to replicate that even the titans can't do it better or cheaper.
They are betting that baking the bread is actually a lot harder than it looks to the finance guys.
Precisely. And so far, they're winning that bet. But it's a very fragile truce.
Now, speaking of fragile, let's talk about how these boxes actually get made. Because Arista doesn't own a single factory, do they?
No, they are a completely fabless company.
Meaning they just design it.
They design the gear, but contract manufacturers actually build it. Companies like Jabil, Sanmina, and Foxconn. The report lists major manufacturing facilities in Malaysia, Vietnam, and Mexico.
I noticed they've been moving out of China to avoid the U.S. tariffs.
They have, but the supply chain is still this massive spider web of geopolitical risk.
And the most critical component isn't the metal box or the plastic, it's the silicon inside. Who makes the actual switching chips?
This is the other side of the squeeze we talked about. Arista is squeezed by the titans on the customer side, and they are squeezed by Broadcom on the supply side.
The report explicitly calls Broadcom their predominant merchant silicon vendor.
Yes. Merchant silicon just meaning chips that anyone can theoretically buy off the shelf.
Unlike Cisco, which historically spent billions designing their own custom proprietary chips.
Right. Arista buys the best-in-class chips from Broadcom. It gives them speed and flexibility, but it also means they have almost zero control over the hardware pipeline. The report clearly states they do not have long-term supply guarantees.
Wow. So if Broadcom has a manufacturing hiccup, or if there is, say, a trade war over Taiwan where a lot of the silicon starts its life.
Arista literally stops shipping products.
That's terrifying.
Essentially, yes. They are the ultimate middleman. They add immense value through their software, but they are completely dependent on other people for the raw materials and dependent on just a few other people for the revenue.
It's a highly profitable position, but a very exposed one.
Very exposed.
There was one other risk factor in the 10K that I found really counterintuitive. We usually assume that if the AI sector booms, hardware sales boom. A rising tide lifts all boats, right?
Usually, yes.
But the report suggests that might not be a straight lineup.
Yeah, this is a fascinating nuance they call optimization risk.
Optimization risk.
Right now, we are the brute force phase of the AI boom. The models are inefficient, so companies just throw thousands of GPUs and networking switches at the problem to power through it.
But what happens if the software developers actually get smarter?
Exactly. What if next year they figure out how to train a massive model with half the compute power?
Then they only need half the network.
Exactly. Or what if the overall AI bubble deflates just a little bit? Right now, customers are panic buying infrastructure because they are terrified of being left behind.
It's a gold rush, and everyone is hoarding shovels.
But if the gold isn't as easy to find or monetize as they thought, there are going to be a lot of unused shovels sitting in warehouses.
And Arista specifically warns that sudden order cancellations from these titans are a real possibility.
It's the classic boom and bust cycle. Just because the macro trend is up doesn't mean it's a straight, smooth line.
It's definitely something for investors to watch. Before we wrap up our deep dive today, I really want to touch on the culture section of the report.
Oh yeah, it's quite unique.
Because in a sea of tech bros and Silicon Valley stereotypes, Arista's leadership looks a little different.
They really do. Arista is one of the very few companies in the S&P 500 with both the female CEO, Jayshree Ullal, and a female CFO, Chantelle Breithaupt.
And Jayshree Ullal is arguably one of the best operators in tech history.
Without a doubt. She took this company from a tiny, scrappy startup fighting the Goliath that was Cisco all the way to a $9 billion juggernaut.
And they run the company incredibly lean.
Extremely lean. As of December 31st, 2025, they only have about 5,115 employees globally.
Wait, really? 5,000 employees generating $9 billion in revenue?
If you do the math, that is nearly $1.8 million in revenue per employee. That is completely off the charts compared to legacy hardware companies.
That's software company math. And for the shareholders listening, what is the return policy here? Are we getting a quarterly dividend check?
No dividends. Arista still firmly categorizes itself as a growth company.
So they are reinvesting it all.
They believe the absolute best use of their cash is investing in R&D, building that next generation of Ultra Ethernet, or just buying back their own stock.
I saw they authorized a $1.5 billion stock buyback program in May 2025.
Correct. So they are returning value to the owners just through equity appreciation and buybacks, not cold hard cash in your pocket.
Got it. So let's zoom out and synthesize all this. we have a company that is undeniably the spine of the current AI build-out.
Hmm.
They have successfully shifted from just wiring up data centers to creating a unified center of data. They are fighting the open standards war against NVIDIA's closed ecosystem, and so far, they are holding their ground.
They are. But I think the narrative for 2026 is going to be entirely about execution.
Execution under pressure.
Can they keep the Titans happy without destroying their own profit margins? Can they
Mhm.
navigate that supply chain minefield with Broadcom and the contract manufacturers?
Right.
And, most importantly, can they actually prove that standard Ethernet really is fast enough for the next generation of AI clusters?
Here's a final provocative thought for you to chew on before we go. As we move toward what the report calls agentic AI and eventually physical AI.
You mean like robots and autonomous systems?
Exactly. Robots, autonomous cars, AI agents making real-time decisions in the physical world. The stakes for the network change completely.
How so?
Well, think about it. Right now, if ChatGPT takes an extra second to write your poem, nobody dies. It's just slightly annoying.
Sure.
But if a swarm of autonomous vehicles is communicating via an edge network to avoid a multi-car collision, and the network creates that tail latency we talked about.
That's a disaster. It's a matter of life and death.
Exactly. The network isn't just moving files anymore, it is moving decisions.
Wow, that is a great point.
And if Arista wants to be the central nervous system for that world, the spine cannot have a single slip disk. The reliability has to be absolute. That is the true challenge they are signing up for over the next decade.
And that is exactly why this Ultra Ethernet bet is so high stakes. If they win, they become the foundational standard for the next industrial revolution.
And if they lose to proprietary tech,
They just become a utility company. A very
Yeah.
profitable utility company, but a utility nonetheless.
it is going to be a fascinating year to watch them navigate this.
Absolutely.
It was a Revenue Radio podcast. Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay updated with our latest analyses.